Welcome back to the undefeated, unscripted, undeniable, defining moments podcast. My name is Wong Lam. Today's a very special co-host, first time ever, my wife, Margie Lam. You can speak in the mic and say hello to everyone.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, usually I'm behind the camera and behind the audio, but this time in front of it. So exciting.
This is going to be great. And our amazing special guest is the undefeated Congresswoman Stephanie Bice. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you all this morning. It's been a while, hasn't it? We've been trying to make this happen for a while, and it's been kind of a crazy few months.
I know.
Thrilled to be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How you been doing this morning?
I'm good. You know, being back in the district is great. I like being home. I like sleeping in my own bed. People have asked me sort of how often are you here? And it's about 2 weeks in D.C., 2 weeks here.
Wow.
The great thing is our direct flights came back about March. And so
nice.
2.5 hours I can be in D.C. and 2.5 hours I can be home. So pretty great.
Yeah. Family, husband, kids?
Yeah. So Jeff and I have been married for 25 years this January. And our oldest daughter's at Oklahoma State. Our younger daughter's a senior in high school. We think she's made the decision to head north to Stillwater as well. We'll keep our fingers crossed. It'll be a little easier for Jeff and I. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a transition for us. This is a season of life of transition, certainly because of my election to Congress, but also we're getting ready to be empty nesters. And so it's kind of a crazy time.
Yeah.
That is insane. So how does it feel to be in Oklahoma City, Project 3810, the house that Kyle Golding built?
You know, Kyle and I have been friends for a very long time, and it's really cool to see this space and be with you all here.
Yeah.
Get to experience the cool things he's doing. I've watched his Saturday morning hustle videos online and know that he's really doing great work out there. So.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Margie, we have some gifts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We got one for Penny.
Yes, we do.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
and she helps set all this.
She does. Penny's amazing.
Yeah.
I will make sure to get
I don't know
these
which
to her.
one was.
Thank you for that.
And then we have another gift for you and your husband.
Aw,
He's got
thank
one
you.
gift in the bag, but you got the other three.
Okay,
So
excellent.
that's all yours, Congresswoman.
I'll make sure to let him know. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, habits, morning habits. You're a busy woman. What are some of your habits that help you throughout the day?
You know, I'm trying to be a little more intentional in how I do things. In the past, it's sort of been kind of go with the flow, but because time is really a commodity at this point for me, I try to be intentional in how I do things. My daily routine, I usually wake up, read my phone, which is the news, typically kind of get caught up on what's happening, and then get ready for the day. I'm not a coffee drinker. I actually prefer hot tea. And so fix myself a cup of Earl Grey and I drink it like the British. People laugh. I like cream and sugar in my tea and grab a cup of caffeine and out the door.
Nice.
Oh, I've never had cream and sugar and tea before.
I know. I'll make you some scones too. So it'll be a full British setup for you at some point.
Okay, well, I guess it's on air, so we'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
We'll have scones and British tea. And
hey, I have to say, in my former life, I actually ended up being a food reviewer for the Oklahoma Gazette, which you probably didn't know.
No, I didn't know.
A little tidbit about me before I ever ran for office. And one of the reasons that I did it was I had started a blog back in 2010, and it was all about food because I love to cook. And so I make a really mean scone.
Do you cook or bake?
I do both.
Yeah.
I actually do both. I probably enjoy baking more.
Okay.
But I'm pretty good at both of them. So
baking is for the structured people.
That's true. You're right. And I usually am pretty structured. But I love to make really great scones and also biscuits. And if you visit my Instagram page, you can see some of the pictures of the things I've baked in the past.
So. That's awesome.
And actually, we don't have a research department. We are our own research department. And we did, quote unquote, troll your Instagram page. And I did see a lot of food pics. And I did see a picture of a steak. How do you take your steak?
Ooh, I like my steak medium rare.
Oh, we have a winner. We can stop the podcast now.
Truly, if you are cooking your steak anything over, medium, there's a problem. We're in Oklahoma. You should be, medium rare, maybe even, a little rarer on the rare side. But yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually, my husband and I decided to, during the COVID pandemic, we ended up buying a half a cow. So now we have a freezer full of meat.
Awesome.
So we can have a good fatty ribeye anytime we want.
Oh, man.
Nice. Half cow club over here, too. Yeah. Well, we got a full one.
Got a full
That's a lot of freezer space.
It was a lot. Yeah, we were trying to pawn off meat because there's only two of us. So there's only so much cow we can actually eat.
Yeah, we love supporting our local ag culture community. Jeff Parker's one we bought our cow from. His name's Larry. For some reason,
we did end up getting a name for the cow before the cow.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so we were introduced to the cow, which is actually really nice. I know my mom was totally. She said she couldn't do that. She said there'd be no way she could actually meet or know the cow's name before getting it.
I love that you named it Larry. That's
yeah. So we have a whole cow stuffed in the freezer, and like to your point, fatty ribeyes whenever you want. Ground beef from local farm or rancher, and it's great.
We did the same thing. Monty Tucker, I got to know through the Oklahoma Farm Bureau, and noticed that he'd been posting on Facebook that he was, butchering cattle. So called him up one day and said, "Hey, I want one." He said, "November. You can have it in November."
Nice.
This was last summer, and so it took a while, but fantastic.
Yeah.
Fresh, meat that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about the whole ag community here in Oklahoma?
They are incredibly community driven. Mm-hmm. Everything that they do revolves around supporting their own community, whether that be the city, the town, the school. If you look at, for example, Potawatomi County, which is part of the Congressional District, the Shawnee area, the Tecumseh area, it's just a very community driven environment for the ag folks. And so everyone knows everyone else. It's sort of the quintessential 1950s America. They still live in that. You drive down the street and you know your neighbors and you know who just got married or who had a baby or all the things that I think in some ways we miss out on living in an urban or suburban community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. What I noticed every time I go hang out with Parker is everyone waves to everyone and everyone smiles at everyone.
Yeah.
And we live in the city, Oklahoma City now, which isn't bad, but when you try to wave to people, they're kind of just like,
why are you waving at me?
Unless you own a Jeep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What do we do?
Yeah. My husband and I own a Jeep as well. And so I should say my husband has the Jeep. It's not mine. It's his for sure. But I did learn when we bought the Jeep several years ago that there is a specific wave. And if you are driving the Jeep, you need to know the wave and execute properly.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. That's right. Now the modern day Jeepers, the new ones are getting lazy because they put the sticker of the hand on their side mirror. So it acts as a wave.
Yeah, it's true. It's
not the same. Yeah.
It is the cheating wave.
Yeah. We have a Subaru Outback, and some dude in a Subaru Outback tried to wave to me, and I just like, no, bro, this is a Jeep thing, man. You can't do that.
Exactly. You got it wrong.
Yeah. Did you grow up wanting to get into politics?
No, I never even thought about it. I graduated from Oklahoma State University with a marketing degree, and I always sort of pictured myself going off to the big city, maybe New York or, some other big, large urban city and getting into marketing, living in a high rise, having a corner office sort of thing. And, but that wasn't what my plan was at all. And I ended up meeting Jeff in college, and we got married shortly thereafter. And I ended up sort of focusing on sales and marketing. One of the things I knew about myself fairly early on is that I really love to be around people. And I needed to find an avenue that kind of fostered that. And so sales, it's what you do. You're building those relationships and engaging with folks. And so I ended up doing that for, almost 20 years. Pivoted a little bit towards the end and went to work for the family business. My father started a technology company back in the mid-90s. And when we had our daughters, I kind of wanted to be a little bit more flexible with work. And so he said, hey, you can work remote for me. So I did that for a while, and I ended up running all the digital marketing. And that was back in the 2005 timeframe when that was just starting to get to become a thing. And then started my own gig and did social media consulting and digital marketing for a while. And in 2014, a friend of mine came knocking at my door, and he said, hey, I think you should run for for my Senate seat. He was the current sitting senator at the time. And I said, I don't know the first thing about running for public office, and why would I do this, And his answer actually was really profound for me. He said, well, I've seen the things that you've done in the community. I've seen the things you've done in the faith community at our church. And he said, I feel like that you're the type of person that's a go-getter. You do things, you get stuff done. And he said, we need more people like that, and we need more women. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, in the state legislature, or the state Senate, actually, at the time, there were only 3 women serving at the time, out of 48. So as a mother of daughters, I sort of thought to myself, this would be an opportunity to do something that I never really, thought twice about. And I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to do something good for my community. So took a leap of faith, literally called Jeff and said, hey, what do you think about running for office? And he was like, well, if she's already asking the question, the ship has sailed. I better get on board. And so that kind of started my journey, and ran for the Oklahoma State Senate seat that I held. My claim to fame is the fact that I championed alcohol modernization. So if you can buy a cold craft beer at your local On Q or a bottle of wine at the grocery, you're welcome. It was never really, I never really thought about it from the alcohol standpoint. It was always about economic development and jobs. And you've seen all these incredible breweries pop up across Oklahoma, wineries, expansions. Now we have distilleries that have become pretty popular. So really incredible growth. And that was kind of a cool thing to see.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. We definitely appreciate the sacrifice you give to our community, our state, and our country, being a public figure. I mean, and that's the ultimate, being a public servant is what you're doing. And so we appreciate you very much.
And it is a sacrifice, because it's your time, and it's a lot of energy to do the work you're doing.
Yeah, I think I'm blessed. I have an amazing spouse who is incredibly supportive. And even when we were discerning this congressional race, at one point he looked at me and he said, would you consider doing something like this in the future? And I said, maybe, yeah. And he said, then you should do it now, because people are encouraging you to run. They're asking for you to consider it. And you may never get that opportunity again. And I never want you to look back and think, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have taken that leap of faith.
Sure.
So I think surrounding yourself with supportive spouses is what it's all about, regardless of what you want to do, whether it's running for public office or changing careers. My husband sort of jokes that I have professional ADHD. It's like, oh, I want to do that. Let me try this. I haven't done this yet, So
no, that's good. Staying curious.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
absolutely.
No, that's really good. Has there been a defining moment of being, a public servant up till this point for you?
I think probably seeing the alcohol modernization come to fruition. It was sort of I'd worked on it for 2 years almost, and then it was voted on in November of 16, and then it didn't take effect until October of 18. So the morning, October 1st, 2018, it's almost like Christmas morning. You've waited so long to see this actually happen. I remember I went to the Capitol for a big ceremony that Anheuser-Busch put on with the Clydesdales. And then I went to Whole Foods, and they had set up their wine display. And I remember standing there, and the manager came over, ma'am, can we help you? No, I'm just taking it all in, And then I went to Trader Joe's, and that was probably the most shocking to me, because as you all know, Trader Joe's is known for what they, I think, used to call $2 Chuck, which was their cheap wine.
Yeah.
And you couldn't sell it in the Trader Joe's here. And so I vividly remember it was about 11 o'clock on a Monday, October 1st. And I walk in, and this store is packed. There are 5 deep in every checkout line, and every one of them has wine in the cart. And I stood there watching for a bit, and the mayor of Nichols Hills happened to be in there. Not the mayor, the police chief. The police chief. And I knew him, and he walked up to me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm admiring my handiwork." But it was just shocking to see all the excitement around it. It was I think it was a realization that you can make a difference in some way. And there are other pieces of legislation that touch my heart that made an impact on families and lives of people that I will always carry with me. But whether it was in the state legislature or now, I know that the things that I'm doing can have a profound impact. And that's really why I'm here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Take us back to 2020 election night for you. What was going through your mind? What were you feeling throughout that night? And maybe even a few weeks or days that led up to it?
Well, first, I think looking at the campaign as a whole, it was a brutal campaign. We had a 9-way Republican primary and then a runoff election in August. And that primary is in June. So you have about less than 8 weeks before a runoff, which is in the end of August. And then the general election. And what most people didn't maybe think about is that we haven't had a lot of competitive races in Oklahoma. So this ended up being the most expensive congressional race ever run. Wow. Actually, the most expensive race, period, ever run in Oklahoma. There was so much national attention for taking the seat back. You had a lot of outside dollars being brought into the race. And so there was just an unusual dynamic around this congressional race that you'd never seen before. And it was a lot of work. It was really, a brutal slog in some ways because of that focus. But, that November election night was incredible. I think I didn't sleep well the night before, as you can imagine. I was up late and up early and took maybe a little nap, but I was anxious and I did a lot of interviews that morning. And then what was really kind of cool, and I will always remember, is I went and stood in line to vote, and the lines were very long, especially where I live. It was a 2.5-hour wait. Wow. And I remember getting in line and people were telling me, "Oh, we're so excited for you. You're going to win tonight. We cannot wait to see you." And, to see sort of your community and your friends rally around you. And maybe we don't agree on everything, but I also remind people, how long have you all been married?
Well, 3.5 years.
Do you all agree 100% of the time?
Yeah, no.
Jeff and I have been married 25 years. He's a great guy, but we don't agree 100% of the time. And so I think that, you find someone that you trust their values and their judgment, and you run with it. And people did that. And I was just kind of blown away on election night to see the results and know that I was going to be headed to D.C.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great outlook, because the way we look at the United States of America, that's our team, and we're teammates of that team. And so we may not agree on everything, and we shouldn't, because the diversity of thought makes us even stronger and better, right? Yeah. So that's the way we look at life.
No, I think that's exactly right. And that's one of the things when I talk about women running for office, it's not because we're better at all. It's just that we bring a diversity of thought to the table. And I think that we haven't had enough of that. Yeah. And so putting yourself out there, one of the things that I've noticed is that women tend not to see themselves in those roles. They have to be asked. And I'm the perfect example. I had to be asked to run for the Senate. Yeah. People encouraged me to run for Congress. And so I think focusing on those young girls and women who may not think of themselves in these roles is really important. Yeah. And again, we may not agree on every issue or every idea, but you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, I agree. I try to tell my wife she should get into politics too.
Oh, goodness.
It's interesting. I think people have paid attention to politics more in the last 2 years, good, bad, or indifferent, than they ever have before. And what I always said before I ran for Congress was that all politics is local, and you hear that phrase, but truly people realized it with COVID, because you talked about mask mandates and virtual school, and nobody really understood who made the rules. And so COVID maybe in a weird way highlighted that. And so now you see people interested in the school board, interested in city council races. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe long term that brings some perspective to who's really making the laws that we, all live by every day.
Yeah. And boosting civic engagement. Probably. And parents now teaching their kids, like, okay, you see this, if you don't like it, this is how it changes.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right. I think that's how we boost better citizens.
And when I was in the state legislature, it's a little bit different now, but people would say, how do I get engaged? How do I get involved? And I'd say, call me, call your House member or your senator and go meet with them. They'd be happy to come have a cup of coffee with you and get to know you. And I have so many constituents that I became friends with over the years when I was in the state Senate, because they would just engage on a regular basis. They would send me emails. They would, text me, hey, I saw this is coming up for a vote. We really think it's a great option. You want that input from people. You want them to feel like their voices are being heard, and that's why you run.
Yeah.
So
I like that perspective.
Yeah, it's true. We love your social media presence. We see that you're engaged with the ag community and the law enforcement and the military. We see you retweet, quote tweet them all the time. What's your appreciation for them?
Well, I am heartbroken as to what's been happening over the last 3 or 4 weeks with the situation in Afghanistan. I will say that this administration has really, I think, made a catastrophic mistake in how we withdrew. And we can certainly debate whether or not we should have withdrawn. I think some people would argue that we should probably leave the country. Regardless of that debate, it's how we left that's the problem. When we left all of our equipment behind, when we extracted our contractors early, and then didn't have a plan to get everybody out, it's catastrophic. And what's really been hard for me to watch is so many of our military veterans that have served in Afghanistan, some that are friends of mine, and even some of our staff that have sat back and watched the last 3 or 4 weeks with complete just devastation. Why did I spend a year of my life or 3 tours or however long it is in Afghanistan to see it all evaporate in the blink of an eye? That's been really tough. You've seen... I've read recently that the mental health and suicide hotlines have been overwhelmed with people calling. That shouldn't be how it is. Yeah. And on the law enforcement side, my grandfather was the sheriff of Sebastian County, Arkansas, in Fort Smith, and I have a healthy appreciation for law enforcement. I know the challenges they face. I remind people that you shouldn't use a blanket statement for painting a broad brush with people. Cops are bad. No, cops are not bad. There are a few bad cops, and we can. There's a few bad folks in every profession. Doesn't matter, teachers, politicians, you name it. But we have to be real thoughtful in making sure that we support these folks, because literally they are putting their lives on the line every single day. So I want them to know that I value them. I appreciate them. I appreciate their service to the community and to the country, and I'll continue to be a champion for them.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You spoke of Afghanistan. I think Margie might have a few questions.
Well, no, yeah, that's exactly. I just appreciate being able to reach out to you on these issues, because I did. After this all went down, I reached out on Twitter and I just said, this is something that's really weighing on us. We donated a good portion of money to try to help get people out of the country that were stuck there. And then just, being able to see that our representatives that we elected are equally as heartbroken, but, just the action. What are we going to do about this?
Yeah. My office got several calls from folks that had either friends or former colleagues that were Afghan translators that were stuck in the country. And so we were behind the scenes working with, frankly, the State Department wasn't incredibly helpful. When we would reach out to them, we'd get sort of a form email back saying, okay, we're putting them on a list. So there were a lot of my colleagues, especially the freshmen, Ronnie Jackson, who's a freshman member out of North Texas, former physician, but also military himself, Tony Gonzalez out of Texas. There were quite a few members. Mark Wayne Mullen, you all have read the news of Mark Wayne. Just trying to figure out, how do we get these folks out? They were left behind in a really tragic way, and their lives are in jeopardy at this point, and we got to figure out how to get them out.
I think that's a smart plan, is how do we deal with the immediate right now? And the immediate need is, let's get the people out into safety, and then we deal with, and we come back and say, okay, how did this happen? And then what can be done to prevent something like this in the future? Or how do we hold people accountable for what the decisions were made and maybe weren't made through the course of this? So,
and I think that's been a tough message for people. I've done some listening sessions around the community in the last couple of weeks, and people were very angry, and rightly so. They wanted action right now. Yeah. And I kept saying to them, my first priority is getting every American out of the country. Mm-hmm. We have to do that first. Then we can start, holding those accountable for the crisis that occurred there, mm-hmm. and the continued disaster, as I see it, that's happening there. But we have to really focus on the here and now. There'll be plenty of time to investigate who knew what, when, and where. Mm-hmm. But for now, that has to be the priority.
Yeah, there's only so many hours in the day, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's true. And on that Afghanistan thing, it brought back a lot of memories for my parents, because they fled Vietnam, a communist country, and dictatorship, and it brought back some crazy memories.
You and I have a little similar background, both children of immigrants. Mm-hmm. My father actually immigrated here from Iran.
Wow.
And sort of a similar situation in many ways, although he came long before Iran changed into religious hands, so to speak. But, I think some young people don't really recognize what they have.
Yeah.
If you go back to, Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge, or Vietnam, or Iran, or now Afghanistan, people are fleeing because their lives are literally in jeopardy.
Yeah.
This country isn't perfect.
Nope.
But I'd take it over any other place in the world.
100%.
Every day, twice on Sunday,
Yeah.
And I think young people sometimes just take that for granted. They don't realize what they have. And I've said before, we haven't seen tough times in this country. There's been some bumps in the road. Certainly, COVID's been a big challenge. You haven't seen, high inflation and high jobless rates, or even war. Mm-hmm. They're really... excluding Afghanistan, you haven't seen a world war or anything of the like. And so sometimes perspective is really good. Mm-hmm. I was meeting with a gentleman a couple of years ago who at the time was 73. And we were talking about the political environment and how bad things have gotten and how nasty it is on social media. Mm-hmm. And I said, have you ever seen anything this bad before? And he looked at me and he said, well, I've seen worse.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean? And he said, Vietnam, 1968. Mm-hmm. He said, the country was torn apart. People were, you didn't talk to your neighbor if they were supportive of the war. We weren't supporting our military veterans when they were coming back from serving. He said, I've never seen this country so divided as it was back then. Protests, people rioting in the streets, sort of thing. And he said, but you know what? We got over that and things got better. And I was like, what an incredible perspective.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. How do you deal with negativity on social media? Speaking of social media,
I got off. I got off Facebook. I just felt like for my own mental health, I needed to make that decision. And my staff handles my official stuff. I still am on Twitter some. I do some stuff on Twitter just because I feel like it's a little bit, I don't have to dive into that as much.
Right.
I really like Instagram because I feel like it's not the political side. It's more of like what's happening in the community and what I'm doing. And it's more family friendly, if you will. But, social media certainly has its place, and somebody that was in that field for quite some time, I recognize the value, but I also recognize that there are some real downsides. Mm-hmm. To your point earlier about trying to get to know your neighbor, we don't do enough of that. We don't sit down with a cup of coffee and talk things through. We want to shout at each other on social media, and that's not real helpful nor effective.
Yeah.
So.
That's interesting about having a cup of coffee, because my wife actually challenged another person to come meet her.
A disagreement off social media. I did offer just to meet in person to discuss, and she actually took me up on it.
But nothing that she was being a keyboard warrior about was discussed.
Not really, no. But it was helpful to say, okay, there's a human being on the other side of this conversation, and here's things that we have, common agreements on, and here's kind of the common ground that we can come together on and say, yeah, I absolutely can support, what you're feeling about this, or putting action towards this element that we both are really excited about. So there's certainly, the more you can have those conversations with people and get out and just meet face to face and realize like there's a person there. Yep. It's not just a profile picture, and it's, not just words. There's an actual human being with a unique story behind that person. That's really why we started this podcast too, is, get to know the people and get to know their stories beyond just what they do.
That's exactly right. And I think for someone like me that now has this title of, member of Congress, people sort of think, she, doesn't understand or, has never lived it. Look, my parents are divorced when I was young. It was not an amicable divorce at all. I, for a while, was being raised basically by a single mother. I know what it's like to eat mustard and tomato sandwiches for lunch because you have nothing else. I, graduated from college and put myself through school because my family didn't have the money to pay for it, and pulled myself up by my bootstraps and made it happen. And so when you start hearing those conversations and stories from people, then you recognize, okay, maybe they do get it. I worked hard to, get where I am, but that doesn't mean that I've forgotten where I came from.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
What are maybe 2 questions that you wish people would ask you, but no one ever asked you?
Oh, wow. 2 questions that people should ask that don't. One might be, what's it like? What's it really like being in politics? People they see from the outside what it's like, but they don't really understand the dynamics in some cases of how hard it really is. I'm reminded that often you're never going to make everyone happy. Somebody's always going to be mad at you, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that the general public doesn't always see that. They don't realize that you have this side that's pulling in this direction and this side that's pulling in this direction, and you're trying to find some sort of middle ground. And that's hard. It's really hard. It can weigh on you emotionally sometimes, especially when it's really contentious issues. And so I think having a conversation around that aspect of politics may be good, because it gives people the idea that, okay, it's not as easy as it seems. I think they just think that I'm living some glamorous life, that I'm, flying back and forth to DC and eating all these big fancy meals. No, I actually took a picture of my homemade charcuterie board one night, and people were like, "You're eating Triscuits." I'm like, "You're right. I'm eating Triscuits because that's what's in the cabinet." And then just getting to know me as a person. And this is why I love what you all are doing, is because I think it gives people the opportunity to get to know Stephanie, not the Congresswoman.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what our goal is like, we want to get to know Stephanie Bice. And the Congresswoman Bice is the bonus side of it. So what is politics really like?
It's been a real challenge for the freshmen. We came into Congress in January under COVID restrictions. DC was completely shut down. Everybody was wearing masks, including on the floor and throughout the building. I may have reintroduced myself to my colleagues 7 times before they finally said, yeah, we've met before, because you didn't recognize them with masks on. And then when we took masks off, I felt like I was reintroducing myself to the same people. And politics is about relationships, and not just with your side of the aisle, but both sides. And so not being able to do any events or do dinners or have receptions or any of that has been a challenge for the freshmen. It eased in about the April timeframe, April, May. The city removed some of the COVID restrictions, but that's made it really hard. We haven't had a traditional freshman year. We didn't have a traditional swearing-in ceremony. I was allowed 1 person to join me. And after a lot of conversations with my husband, he said, you should take Ainsley, our youngest daughter. She's my Politico kid and campaigned for me. And he said, I would love to be there, but she'll remember it for a lifetime.
Oh, sure.
Take
That's
her.
awesome.
So we did. But, it was tough when you can only have one person see you there on the floor taking the oath. It was kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
So I hope that, at some point people will continue to get vaccinated and we'll be able to get over this pandemic and return to life as we knew it, because I think people are really struggling right now. And 18 months is a really long time to be in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. We listened to Patriot XM 125, and I think it's Stacy on the right.
Stacy on the right.
Yeah, and she did a big shout out for all the freshmen coming in, and I thought that was really, really cool that she did that.
She's been great. I've been on her show a couple times, actually.
Have you? Yeah, that's right.
It's usually later in the evening at 9 o'clock hour or so, but and it, she's I think really thoughtful in how she approaches things. But one thing I will say about the freshman class, there's 45 of us, 20 women. And also an incredible diversity from a background perspective. You have Native American, Korean American, 2 Korean American women from Orange County.
Wow.
You have African American, our Super Bowl champ, Burgess Owens. And we all, come from different walks of life and different backgrounds, but we're all sort of, moving towards the same goal. And that is, we want to retake the House in 2022 if possible, and really fight for conservative values. And so one of the things I was excited to have happened to me was being elected class president.
That's awesome.
I'm the first Republican female ever to hold that role. Who knew? But the class is really fantastic, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that is that's amazing. I think about that, and you talk about the whole diversity of background, and we talk about diversity of thought. I feel like as Americans, we forget that politics, there is a diversity of backgrounds, all walks of life. To your point, that there are tons of men and women out there that are serving their constituents. Doesn't matter what color or age they're serving.
It's exactly right. And in a lot of different capacities, right?
Sure.
Whether it's a school board, city council, law enforcement, they want to make a difference. And many of my colleagues were former mayors. Many of them are veterans and have fought for the flag and fought for the freedoms that we all hold so dear. And they want to protect those. And so they're very passionate about that. There was a really cool commercial during the campaigns last year. I don't know if you all saw it, but it was actually out of Texas, and it was Dan Crenshaw, August Pfluger, Tony Gonzalez, like all these bad people that were taking up arms to try to protect the country. It was kind of a cool commercial.
I did see that.
Speaking of bad people, amazing people, we have a friend. His name is Tom George.
Yeah.
You probably know who we're speaking of.
I know of him from Twitter, actually.
Yeah. Senior chief, retired, 25 years, United States Navy. Amazing dude. Maybe you could get together and meet him sometime.
I would love that.
That'd be awesome.
He sounds like a fantastic guy. We've communicated on Twitter a few times. And, those are the kinds of people you never would have had the chance to meet. And that's one of the things I go back to, loving people and meeting new people and getting to know them. I've met some fantastic folks on Twitter and developed great relationships with them. And so he's one of them I hope to be able to meet in the future.
Yeah, we have too. I saw you look over at Kyle, so we agree.
Kyle's over in the background. That's exactly right.
Oh man, Margie?
Well, no, I think, this has been excellent. It's always great to hear stories of, especially just how you got involved in politics, just because I think it reminds people that it's so doable. It's accessible. Yeah. You can do it too. You just, it doesn't have to be as big of a movement that you had behind you, obviously. And hopefully you don't get as contentious as your race obviously got. Yeah. But, even just being involved at that local level and I think you're right. I think people see now how important that local level really, truly is. And so hopefully, just inspired some people today, just you personally being here, to get more involved and to say, not somebody that has all these big crazy connections and
never in my wildest dreams. I mean, think about this. I don't mind sharing my age. I was 40 years old when I was approached about running for public office. You know, you don't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be some sort of long-term plan. You know, it for me, it fell in my lap in many ways, and I'm incredibly grateful that it did.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone who wants to get into politics?
What I would say, first of all, is go volunteer in a campaign. I think you get a perspective of what a campaign is all about, up close and personal, what it's like to go knock doors. People, when you tell them as a candidate, you have to go out and knock on people, you know, strangers' doors and introduce yourself and ask them for support. Sometimes they bristle a little bit, but that was some of the most fun I've had, is getting out and knocking doors. You meet great people. They're passionate about issues. They're, for the most part, really, really kind. Sometimes they're a little grouchy because they had a no soliciting sign on the door and you knocked on it. Occasionally you have great stories about being chased by dogs. I mean, you know, but I think getting involved in a campaign and understanding the dynamics gives you good perspective on what it's going to take to be able to put yourself out there. So find a candidate, whether it's mayor, city council, school board, state house, state senate. I know for a fact that my colleagues would love to have help in campaigns. We all want that help. And so, you know, get out there and find a candidate that you want to get behind and see how it works. And then you can decide for yourself if that's something that you want to do in the future.
Yeah.
And I would encourage young people to do that too. I have the most incredible campaign staff that volunteered in the last campaign, and I hope I can snag most of them again this time. A lot of college kids that just are passionate and they wanted to get involved, and they had the best time.
That's good.
Lots of great memories.
Yeah. How does Stephanie Bice want to be remembered?
I want, at the end of the day, I want my girls to look up and be proud of me. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Mom did good. Mom was a bad. Mom took risks.
I think we've centered around the podcast title here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We're always trying to come up with
It's late night. Okay, what are we calling this podcast?
Yeah.
What is the title of it?
But yeah, I want, at the end of the day, my family to be proud of me. I want to, you know, my family to, know that I did the best I could. Yeah. And that at the end of the day, my girls know that, you know, I was there for them.
Yeah. That's awesome. Margie?
No, I think,
Well, this is great. I thank you for giving us the time and the privilege to just host a show.
Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. And I didn't know that it was Margie's first time to be on this side. So this is really exciting.
So how do people get a hold of you if they're, if they want to reach out, or, obviously if they're part of your district, how do they get in touch with you?
Great question. So on the official side, you can visit bice.house.gov. If you have things that you need help with, whether it's IRS, Social Security, we're getting a lot of passport, or have been getting a lot of passport calls. People want to travel and haven't been able to. Any of those issues, that veterans issues, if you need help with veterans benefits, any of those issues, call or visit my website. And you can also call my office, 405-300-6890. And my staff is incredible, and they want to help. And that's what we're here for. So
no, they're awesome.
Reach out.
I do have one question, and I'll just start off with, I voted for President Trump twice, and I stand behind his values and what he stands for the United States of America. Have you had the chance to meet President Trump?
I have not. Well, sort of. He did a sort of a town hall call for me during the campaign, and so I got the chance to chat with him on the phone for a few minutes. Yeah. I haven't met him in person. Yeah. I think I may be going to an event where he may be in the future, but that still remains to be seen. But I haven't met him before, so
that'd be awesome. Yeah. Is it here in Oklahoma?
It is not. Oh. No, because he wants to sign up to. that's been maybe one of the most challenging things is there's a lot of, I think, contention with the president and how he approached things. And I understand for some people his approach was unconventional and people didn't really care for it. But I tried to remind people, separate sort of the rhetoric from what was actually happening, the policies, the policies that he was working on, I think made a lot of sense to the country. But, I understand sometimes the Twitter rants got a little much for folks.
Well, I reiterate the fact that the United States is a team, and we're going to be teammates. And so what's best for the United States is what's best for us. And that's the way I'll always look at life. It doesn't matter. So
that's exactly right. Well, thank you for having me on. It's been such a great time. I enjoyed every minute of it. And hopefully I can come back and do this again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll do a follow-up.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie. It's so great to see you again.
Thank you so much.